Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Evolving HR webinar. This one is a topic that I thought would be really, really useful to cover because I think for most of us, we do our our HR qualification. I don't know why I'm doing jazz hands when I talk about HR qualifications, but most of us do the Shroom qualification or the CIPD qualification or whatever it is in the country that we live in towards the beginning of our HR careers. So what then do we go on and do if we want to continue to learn and develop once we've been doing HR for 10, 20 or 25 years in my case? I'm not making any assumptions about the longevity of my panel today in terms of their HR careers. It's entirely up to them if they want to share that with you. So we thought it would be really good to have a conversation around what other options there are out there for people once you've done the one thing that is expected of you to do, so that you can continue to learn. So I will go around the screen and let my panel introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Carol. Let everybody know who you are and what you do and how long you've been doing this.
Absolutely. So Carol Fraser here in New York. I have been doing human resources and entrepreneurship for quite some time. Entrepreneurship is now 25 years. HR this will be my 34th year. So been doing this.
Don't look a day over 28.
No,
that's amazing.
Actual.
Yeah. So, well, you know, I was 30 again this year, right? So it's been a roller coaster over the last 3 decades of what HR is. And what I do right now for HR people is I mentor and coach them through this roller coaster. I tell people I sell you my past to better your future. So do not make the same mistakes I did. Do not spend the monies I did. Just take it out of my brain, please, and get it for like that much of the multiple six figures that I've spent on all of this.
So we were just talking about that before we started this, before we went live, about the cost of higher education in the States versus the UK, which is quite horrifying. Michelle Hartley, please introduce yourself.
Thanks. The short answer of what I do is I dick about on LinkedIn, which many of you will have seen last weekend. The longer answer is I basically transform HR teams from beige to brilliant through one-to-one coaching, my training program, and my HR community called the Geek Squad.
Wonderful. And how long have you been in this business?
I knew you were going to ask me that. I'm at the age where I say, I'm at the age where I say 20 plus, because otherwise I get aged. 20 plus years in HR, 5 years in business.
And Nikki, how about you?
Hi. So HR was my kind of second career. I started off in the hospitality sector.
I was hospitality as well.
Yeah. You learn a lot in the hospitality sector. It sets you up for life. It really does. And then I was reaching my 30s and went, hang on a minute, I better go and get a proper job. I can't pull pints for the rest of my life. So I ended up in recruitment and then put myself through college, university to get my CIPD, my master's in HR, and from recruitment went into generalist HR. I've worn many hats, from generalist HR to talent manager to recruitment manager to L&D director, and most recently OD&D director and coach. So HR burnt me out. Especially through the pandemic and managing HR in hospitality. And 3 years ago, I totally had a breakdown and thought, right, I can't keep doing this. So I reinvented myself, and now I help others to do the same through coaching.
Love that. I think I've got a similar story. Michelle's got a similar story. I don't know if Carol's ever burnt out. Have you ever burnt out, Carol? Horrifyingly.
Depends on the definition of burnout. I don't think that I fall into the people pleaser mode very much. So I'm more confrontational Like, you come at me and try to burn me out. Baby, I'm going to make you burn out.
I've literally got visions of you, Carol, just holding a Molotov cocktail ready to light it. Like, come on.
You're like, hold my beer.
I think former me and former Michelle and former Nikki could have done with a Carol in our life.
Word.
That's why I'm a coach. So I can say, don't get burned out, get even.
Yes.
Love that. So I'll start off. I'll come to you first, Nikki, on this one. What does career development mean or look like when you're 10, 20 years into your HR career?
Yeah, hasn't it evolved? I mean, when we all started in HR, you basically just went to CIPD networking events in person, or went and got your qualifications. So for me, it's always been about learning on the job. And I like this 70-20-10 philosophy in learning and development, and still sort of preach that in the businesses that I work in. But getting curiosity is king, really, and learning, being interested and learning what else is out there, what others are doing. Talking to people, learning from people, networking with people, and just going deeper. And that could be into a specialist area. So I got curious about OD&D and bought some books and joined some network groups and started to learn about OD&D. Or it could be doing qualifications, or pivoting and going into learning more about marketing. I mean, marketing skills in HR are, absolutely key. And obviously all your commercial skills and your leadership skills as well.
Cool. How about you, Michelle? What does career development look like at this stage?
Yeah, it's funny. When I was in-house HR, which is only like 6 short years ago, I used to find different things to go and like geek out on, and there was nothing really around. I don't know if you all think there's nothing really around like we see today. So there wasn't really any like stuff for cool people with like interesting, different, actually based in the role. So I used to end up geeking out in the organizations that I was actually in. So when I worked for Baker Machinery Company, I properly nerded out about packaging, and I properly nerded out about how our machines were the best machines. And that really like lit my fire for all of that curiosity that wasn't really going anywhere apart from like CIPD events that were just slightly boring. So I think
CIPD short courses as well. Yes. I know I did quite a lot of those over the years. But it was
really
always
geeking out on case law and stuff as well. Like I love all of that, like finding the random cases that are proper weird, like the Pastafarian and stuff like that. I talk about him a lot.
Sorry, what now? Cool stuff.
There's a case where this guy basically won the right to wear a colander on his head because he was able to prove that being a Pastafarian was a religion and a belief. So that's a thing. It's an actual BBC article on the case as well.
I'll find it.
Isn't it brilliant?
In the chat. That's hilarious. So what you're saying is you basically went out and found it for yourself. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
How about you, Carol?
Yes, it's a little bit of both of what these two ladies have said. It's because there are so many specialties. Many times people go into HR as a recruiter or as a generalist and don't really understand that there are really distinct specialties that you could focus on and excel at. So when I think about my own personal career, I probably 10 years into my career, my goals were really, I wanted to be a CHRO. And at the time, the clearest path to being a CHRO was going into comp and benefits, right? Understanding the numbers, understanding the fact that this is the largest expense on a P&L. And so I went and got the certification as a certified comp professional. And so, but the sad part is that's a long process and it's an expensive one. Again, take my knowledge. And by the time I was done, it had pivoted to, we had created this business partner role. And now that was the way towards being a CHRO. And so I say that now that's 20 years in, if you think about where I was at 20 years into my career, it is a little bit more about what, each of these ladies have said, which is find your magic, find what really doesn't burn you out, that actually keeps your curiosity and keeps your love of learning. And it could be within HR, it could be outside of HR. So career development for me is anytime you're looking at growing yourself to another level, whether it be breadth or depth, you've got to learn the whole totality of what that looks like. And don't be afraid to go, oh, marketing, oh, public speaking, oh, whatever, and learn what you need to do to enhance what it is that is going to bring you the greatest return for you personally, not just for your career.
That's a really good point, actually. There's an element to, so how do I want to say this? I think a lot of us will focus on HR related training, but actually the skills that you need as you continue to develop have less to do with HR and more to do with leadership and marketing and public speaking, all of those sorts of things that you've just talked about. And I don't think we always recognize that. And then we just continue looking through. I'm not being critical of the CIPD, but that would be the only thing I would ever look at. I would go to the CIP website and go, like, what else is there I can do? But looking outside of the actual HR arena, you could probably find that there's an awful lot of really useful learning and training and things that you could do that will complement the skills that you already have. How have you managed to challenge yourself when you got to that point where you were the most experienced person in the room? So either you're heading up the HR team and everybody in the team has got less experience than you, or, you know, how do you continue to make sure that your brain doesn't go stale? And I'll stay with you on this one, Carol, first.
So for me, and I think that most of my coaching clients, it's deeper work so that I'm staying abreast of what's happening, because let's face it, things are changing every second of the day, but it's deeper work so that if I am the most experienced person in the room, don't be so quick to help others directly by telling them something, but rather the deeper work that I work with my clients on is listening intuitively and understanding a much broader lens, so that it's not about telling, it's about asking. It's about trying to lift up the rest of the room to get to wherever you are in your experience, right? And I think for myself at least, and I know for many of my clients, I'm usually the only woman in the room. So one of the things that we are always up against is it being how we're perceived. And so saying less and being very judicious with what comes out of your mouth, and if it's an inquiry to cause curiosity and people to think, that's what really kind of frames your ability to influence.
And I'm just going to pick up on what Charlene said in the chat there, that she went through a phase of hanging out with the business change team because she could see the overlaps, and now change and transformation is so prolific as a required skill set for HR pros. I remember when things like, I'll come back to OD again, Nikki, and also Nikki, somebody's asked in the chat whether you've got any good OD books that you would recommend. So if there's anything you can think of, pop it in the chat for, I can't see who it was that asked that question now.
Go and get them off Michelle for Lisa.
Eliza. But it's I can't remember where I was going with that. Oh yeah, the requirements have changed as the years have gone by. I remember when OD started to come in as a requirement, and then change and transformation. And I can remember there was a point where I thought, well, I've never done that. Like, I don't know, how do I go away and get that experience if that's what they're now looking for? But because it does feel like sometimes they're looking for different things the whole time. Michelle, how about you in terms of challenging yourself when you've got more experience than everybody else in the room?
I love what Carol said about curiosity, because that's one of we literally did that module today in the business partner program that I run, because it's massive for me. And I think it's really interesting when you just get curious about who you're talking to and where they've come from and what they're doing, and, you know, the things that they love, and you just get so much more from it. So I think definitely including the curiosity bit is really important. But for me, as a kind of, I was going to say aged, seasoned HR professional who's
Seasoned is
also
a better
aged,
word than aged.
I often find myself like paying it forward or giving stuff back, which I guess aligns to Carol's principle around how you coach people, right? But making sure that I'm always giving something back, mentoring people, coaching people, that kind of stuff. And when I was in-house, that was particularly important for me. So I used to go back to my university and go and present to the master's students and talk to them about why it's important to have a career in HR. Out of them, I'd normally say I'll offer to mentor a couple of people. And so I kind of always have something about giving back, because I just feel like, a little bit like Carol said in her intro, helping other people not to make mistakes that I did is really important and helpful to me. So that appeals to my core value when you're kind of a seasoned HR pro. I think it's a good way to keep yourself entertained.
I love that idea of giving back as well. I've never done anything like that. I'm obviously mean and selfish, but
you give back every day in your community, Kirsty.
Exactly.
Thank you, Nikki. I'll pay you later. How about you, Nikki, in terms of challenging yourself?
Yeah, ditto to all the above. And picking up on what Michelle said about mentoring is reverse mentoring and learning from people that are totally out of your sphere and your scope. I joined a reverse mentoring program for ethnic minorities in retail, hospitality, leisure sector, and it taught me so much about assumptions and sort of barriers and problems, which I wouldn't have been able to learn anywhere else. And then just staying ahead. So I think in HR, we're our own worst enemy in looking at development for everyone else except for ourselves. So flip the coin. And if a marketing manager came to you or an IT manager came to you and said, I need to develop, what would you do for them? And then flip that round and do it for yourself.
I do sometimes think, and this may just be me being cynical, but we don't always get given a budget for our own development. I know, I mean, I don't know what you ladies find, but when people come to me for coaching, or when people come to me to do my SPICE program, they're nearly always paying for it themselves. I would say it's probably about 50-50 company paying versus individual paying. And sometimes they don't even want their company to know, because they feel like it would be seen that they didn't know what they were doing, and that was why they were approaching someone for coaching. You're nodding, like Michelle. Is that your experience too? Do you find? I mean, with your Find Your Awesome program, how what's the kind of proportion of company paid versus self-funded?
Yeah, I mean, I'm nodding along ferociously, because that is exactly what I experience. In that, I think there are probably 85% of people that come on my programs, and I have like 20-25 people a quarter, are self-funders because they just don't have budget, and or they don't want an organisation to know they're doing training. And I don't know why we've attached this like shame to our training. I don't know where that's come from, but I was the same. I remember, like, I don't want people to know I'm doing a coaching qualification. Like, that means there's something wrong, right? So yeah, it's odd. But yeah, most of mine are self-funders, but because of that, I end up doing like payment plans and stuff like that, because I remember what it was like to be an HR person with no budget and not a lot of like free income to randomly spend on stuff like courses. So yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? We don't allocate anything for ourselves.
No, I mean, the only time I spent significant money on my own development was when I got made redundant and I had a settlement agreement.
Yeah.
And that's when I did my coaching qualification, and I did a fabulous program with Cornell University. It was a strategic HR management program, because I wanted to know that I still knew all the technical stuff, and I wanted to know how things had changed, and I just wanted to test myself. And I was really, it's just so sad. It was really pleased because it was blooming hard. And so I never thought I was going to sail through it. I didn't want to sail through it for $5,000 or $6,000 or whatever it was, but it really, really challenged me. And I came away from it kind of buzzing, like, oh, I do, despite the fact that I've just been made redundant, I do still love this subject. I do still love what I do. I've learned so much that I've then taken forward. So that was really good. But my company would never have paid for that. Yeah. And I wouldn't have been able to afford something that chunky had I not had a settlement agreement, which is a real shame.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, what do you think are some of the ways that experienced professionals can stretch themselves without moving to another organization? Because I do think sometimes we move for a fresh challenge, because even if the role is a similar sort of level, you've got a new business, a new set of people to learn, all of that kind of thing. So what are some of the ways that people can do that without actually changing organization? And I'll come to you first, Michelle, because I was on you anyway, so I'll stay with you.
Cool. So and it's interesting because someone has mentioned it in the chat. Was it Charlene? Was there a Charlene? Yeah, Charlene.
Charlene?
So with my team, when I was an in-house HRD, I used to give them basically a metric that they had to go out and spend an entire day with another function of the business, then come back and produce what we used to call like a commercial report. So they would go out with a customer, with one of our staff, and understand the experience of what was going on in the organisation, but from a customer's point of view. And they just found it as the most kind of impactful days they've gone away on, because they suddenly realised why, for example, engineers weren't answering the phone in the middle of the day because they're in a clean room environment and they're not allowed it, or why they don't read great big reports, or because they're reading it on a screen that's like this big and they don't use their laptops because until they log in at home they don't do it. So for me, I think there's definitely something about looking at other areas of the business that you can kind of get your teeth into, have a little look at, understand, go and spend time with. And in my last role, I ended up line managing marketing and IT, which doesn't sound like a great connection. I think it's because I was actually manage people. Yeah, I don't really know why. But that was great, because actually what I was able to see was that other kind of, let's call them service functions in the organisation, were having the same problems. And actually then I realised that I could offer a lot more to these different functions, because we were seeing the same blockers, we had the same issues, we had the same kind of concerns about service delivery and how we were going to do it. So for me, I think there's something about kind of expanding your knowledge internally, but also expanding your knowledge in that breadth of the organisation and supporting other functions as well. So I think there's a lot to go at, and that was in a fairly small UK-based organisation that we were able to do that. So I think it's very possible, whatever size and range of organisation you've got.
I totally agree. And I'm just going to jump in for a second again, because I've been reading some of the stuff in the chat. I noticed that Sue had asked about how we can better learn to influence senior stakeholders when they don't want to take crucial HR advice. And a couple of you have given some really good answers there. 100%, Carol said it's about learning the questions to ask. And I noticed that Naomi also said about find out what's driving them and use their language. I cannot stress that enough to people. We talk about HR far too much. Some of you have referenced the HR bubble in the chat. We live in an HR bubble with our work. We do not talk to leaders in a way that they're even interested in, let alone understand. And I have made that mistake so many times. And it's a core part of the SPICE program that I do, because I used to go along to all my meetings with managers and go, have you got any vacancies? Have you got any employee relations issues? What else can I do for you? And they'd be like, why am I having this meeting? Like, why are you taking up half an hour of my time? And so what I always say to people now is just ask them how things are going for them. Like, don't go in there talking about HR. Just say, how is business this month? There's a really good way of just starting a conversation. Or what keeps you awake at night? Probably not a first question, because you'd look a little odd, but that's one of my favorites to ask. Like, are things going well right now? What is holding you back from this being a good month or not being a good month? And so you don't have to be technical. I think sometimes we hold back out of fear. I mean, I work with oil traders and derivatives traders, and I couldn't describe what they were trading. I know what a barrel of oil is, obviously, but when it comes to derivatives, I couldn't describe that to anybody if my life depended on it. But I could say, how's the market? What's going on? And you can turn the conversation away from jargon. So if they start going down jargon alley, you can call it back to, okay, what are the what obstacles are there? Like, what are our competitors doing? Those sorts of things. And we don't do enough of that. And actually, it's a really good way of challenging ourselves to just switch those conversations around and stop talking about all the things that we got told that we should talk about. Because I'm going to be blunt, no one cares apart from us. They don't care. Right. No one cares. And it's like no one gives a shit what HR thinks is a priority this week. It's like you have to talk to them about what they're doing. Everyone likes talking about themselves.
Yeah. And I saw Sue's comment, and I was like, when I used to come up against senior leaders that wanted to do stuff that was going against, like, I think Sue called it crucial HR advice, I just let them. I'd be like, do you know what? Here's the risks. Here's what I'm suggesting is the best route. You can literally do whatever you want as long as you know the risks. So I would just send them the risks, and more often than not, they take my advice anyway. But I would get almost, to Carol's point before we went live, almost like confrontational about it, because I'd be like, do you know what? I don't care either. Like, if you don't want to follow the process, I don't care. It's you that's going to stand up in an ET and explain yourself, not me.
That is actually, people find that really kind of, but I got to that point too, where it's like, do you know what? I can lead the horse to water. I can tell you what's going to happen. And I remember one wonderful conversation saying to someone, yeah, absolutely, you can let him go for that reason. But he will bring a claim of unfair dismissal and he'll win. And this is why he'll win. So up to you. Because at the end of the day, it's their job, their team, their budget. And if you end up in tribunal, which I used to be like in fear of ending up in tribunal, but nowadays I'm like, well, I'm not the one that got us here.
Exactly.
And if a tribunal claim lands on my desk, okay, that's just another process I have to manage, but I'm not going to take it as a reflection on me. It's like, nah. So I think there was a lot of development for me around learning to care a little bit less about other people's decisions.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't care, but just don't take it to heart.
Don't take ownership.
Yes. It's like, do we think, I mean, not to be critical of Sue at all, but when it's something that we think is crucial HR advice, stop and ask, why do I think it's crucial? If they don't follow it, what's the worst that can happen? It's usually we'll end up with a court claim. It's usually not going to be that someone might die.
The good news is, talk about job security. Go ahead, fuck up all you want. Oh, sorry, probably should.
No, it's fine.
I am so glad that was you and not me.
It's always Carol. I love it. It's fine. No, but this is the thing, that there's passion in these conversations, and sometimes the F-bombs slip out, and that's all fine. But I think sometimes it's worth asking yourself, why do I think this is crucial, and what will actually happen if they don't follow my advice? And the worst case scenario for you is it might actually create a shit ton more work for you. But that's about it. And then you just deal with that work, because it is what it is. But always cover your ass by putting your advice in an email.
Which is what we do every day in the consultancy world anyway.
Absolutely. All about the CYA. God, let me just jump back. Sorry, I've gone off at a tangent because that's what I do. Nikki, are you aware of any kind of micro credentials or learning platforms that are worth people looking at beyond the big qualifications like CIPD or master's degrees and that sort of thing? Anything
I mean, there's loads of freebies, isn't there? Especially in today's world. I mean, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, you can get a bit of freebie stuff on there, or if your company's paying for premium. They're like Microsoft. If your company uses Microsoft, there's a whole suite of Microsoft Enterprise stuff that can upskill you in like digital world. I couldn't even say it, so that's how clued up I am on technology. Project management, I took myself off and did a agile project management course. Managing and getting involved in projects is really, really key as well. And then other things that we take for granted as human endeavors but aren't necessarily skilled at, which is going back to what you were saying before, is learning how to network and influence people, and that whole communication, storytelling, and that driving that business impact through storytelling and through influencing others as well. All things that you can access online and do, even on YouTube, Substack. All these places are available at no cost at all. You've just got to be curious and want to push yourself. And put the time in.
Yeah, absolutely. Carol, how about you? Any platforms or credentials you?
I mean, actually, they just hit on two of the best ones, which is YouTube and Substack. There's a lot of creators and a lot of people out there offering a lot of information. And, some of it you have to subscribe to, and there might be a small fee. I mean, I think that I've probably joined 4 newsletters or, podcast things that they're putting out on Substack for like $5. a year. It's just so small. They want to get their voice out. But the reason why a lot of people are turning to that is, at least here in the States, is because everything else is being overly filtered. Right, Michelle?
Yeah.
And those are areas
Michelle.
exactly where you can really speak a bit more freely. But look, books. Come on. There are so many amazing books that are coming out that are micro learnings, that are nano subjects, that it's so easy to get depth in a topic now without having to, have a book this thick. So I love, and look, there's a lot of free ebooks available that you could easily download and keep abreast of what's happening. And again, as all of us have kind of said, and I just put into a post the other day, you didn't start your business to run an HR department. I did. So I don't need to know the depth of your product like you do, Mr. CEO. I need to understand it enough so that I can help you move your business forward. And I think that getting an ebook that has maybe some broadness with a little bit of depth is giving you insights that you didn't have prior to that ebook. And it's also giving you intel and maybe vocabulary and maybe point of view that you can adopt into how you are sitting in the room and influencing and trying to get them to take your HR advice, as Sue's been talking about.
Yeah. Michelle, what would you add to that in terms of platforms and things?
Yeah, I think as much as I love to bash the CIPD, if you have maintained your membership, you have access to a load of academic journals. And I am still a nerd, right? That's why I've got the HR Geek Squad, because I am an actual geek. But I love to go in there and just search for random topics that I'm interested in and see all the different articles that pop up. And then I geek out on academic articles for stuff. For example, the Perceived Weirdness Index is my favourite thing ever in the world.com. So yeah, I think there are ways, and to come back to Nikki's point right at the beginning, if you're curious and you kind of geek out about stuff, you will find awesome things to read and get your head around, and you'll find great people to follow and email newsletters to subscribe to and stuff like that. But yeah, my favorite thing is going geeking out on academic journals and finding out weird stuff like the Perceived Weirdness Index.
I did not know that about you. That is my idea of hell. I'm a prolific reader, and I don't know if it's an ADHD thing or just a me thing, but I really struggle to read any nonfiction, even if it's a subject that I'm interested in. I find that I scan over the same line over and over again. So I listen to ebooks. If I want audiobooks, if I want to read nonfiction, I have to hear it rather than see it. But there is an app, and I can't remember the name for the life of me, that summarizes books for you. And
Blinkist.
That's it, Blinkist. Because what you tend to find with a lot of nonfiction books, it's like when you Google a recipe online, they have to tell you all about the farm they grew up on before you actually get to the list of ingredients.
That says you need 5 carrots. Yeah.
And so there's a number of nonfiction books that I've tried to read where the points that they're actually making could have been 3 chapters, but they've got to spin it to 200 pages. So you have an awful lot of fluff. And that's where I lose my patience. It's like, I don't care about your high school prom. Just talk to me about influencing skills. That's what the point of this is, So Blinkist, I think, is something I think it's not free, but I don't think it's expensive. So little things like that. But I've not done much. I've done a couple of things on Coursera. And what's the other one? There's another one, Udemy.
Oh yeah,
Udemy.
Yeah, Open University as well.
Yeah.
They have lots of online stuff. Depends how you learn.
Very true. Very true. And then I think also, in-person events.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of learning opportunity at, when you go to in-person events, as long as again, it depends on how you learn. And if you're going to be stuck in a seat all day listening to people bleat at you, then that might not go in and stick. But, if people make it engaging, I think there's lots of different types of events out there now. And 2 of the people on this call are responsible for a couple of them. But there's an effort to try and make it more engaging for people and, not just sitting still and No. But and I hope that things like these webinars, I hope, are useful for people as well. And we're trying to cover topics that people would want to know more about. So, that's still learning. Carol, what professional communities or networks have helped you in terms of growth, and how do you make sure you get the most out of them?
It's interesting. Over the years, I think I've tried everything and I get something out of all of them, but nothing's ever, I can't say that I've stuck around with something long term, short of being a part of communities and associations that are aligned with certifications, right? Where you have to do XYZ to maintain that certification. I mean, even in my ICF coaching, it's so hard. I feel sometimes that people have more time on their hands than I do, and they just all day long. And I'm like, I can't keep up with this. So when I think about kind of the communities that have help me for a period of time, usually when I'm most engaged. And while I personally have not been deemed ADHD, I find that I'll love something and embrace something for probably about 6 months deeply. And then beyond that, it's a mini squirrel moment, and it's like, oh, look at that. And I think part of that is, especially over the last 5 years, I can't say that I was like that beforehand, but over the last 5 years, it's just things change so exponentially quick. And I don't want to follow the trend, but I also don't want to be left behind with the tsunami that's happening. So I say, one of the things I always say, people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, right? And I think a lot of the times the reason and season, there's really silver linings there, and take advantage of what you can in those communities when you're able to engage, and don't get lost in the whole, but this didn't last forever. And just know that you are absorbing what your brain needs at that moment, and don't get mad at yourself if now your brain is seeking some other stimuli from a community or something. So I mean, here in the States, we've got so many, and let's face it, I am a part of so many communities on Slack right now. I can't keep up. But I saw somebody put in the thing, it's even if you are part of these associations, just being there and just what you said, you're learning every time you have an interaction, right? So remember, every interaction is a learning opportunity. So whatever community you're leaning into, you're learning.
Yeah. I think sometimes we have to ask ourselves why we join these things as well. I've joined communities that I've paid for and then thought, I haven't engaged at all. Like, why did I want to do? I joined it because it looked like fun and they all look nice, but it didn't actually give me anything beyond that, which is interesting. Nikki, how about you in terms of networks and communities?
Oh, well, Carol, I'm just really happy that you said that, because I'm very transitional based on what I want at the time and what I need. So early on in my HR career, it was very much going to CIPD events, listening to people, watching, employment tribunals, all that sort of thing. And then I've progressed my career. It's like, okay, so I need to know about L&D now. So joining L&D groups and learning all about that, and the same with OD&D, and the same with coaching. And now, I'm a business owner, so I go to business owner network events, but I can guarantee that getting out there, meeting other people, meeting like-minded people, not just helps you learn, but it helps to make you feel more confident that you do know what you're talking about, and that you're not alone, and that you can test things, ask questions in a safe environment as well. So for me, that's where I get more value than actually physically learning new skills and things. Yeah.
I wanted to come to Michelle last on this because you've got a very active community, but we could talk about the geeks for ages, and I can see in the comments that people get an awful lot from that. Do you still get something from that?
Yeah.
In terms of like your own growth and development and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I set up the Geek Squad because I missed having a team. So when I left corporate, I missed having a team of HR professionals to talk to. So then I thought, oh, well, I can just make one now, like having that business owner realization, like, oh my God, I can make this. So made it. And it was always going to be a series of webinars each month where we got together and we learned something together. So like a development webinar that ticks off your CPD for the month and jobs are good. Then we started doing those and they are great. They're still great. They're still something we love. But then I missed that like chat, banter, oh my God, guess what just happened thing that you have in the HR team. And so then I created the WhatsApp group and now it's become a feral WhatsApp group with some webinars on the side. But it is genuinely like the most joyful place you could ever be, because you've basically got 100 cheerleaders in your pocket, all of whom understand what you're doing and what you're going through, and all of whom will give you some advice if you need it. Like there are people in there who, to come to your point about participation, some people don't participate, but I've had members that have been in it for 3 years and never attended a thing, but they love it because they love watching it from the side and catching up on recordings and stuff like that. But yeah, I was going to say what we had today, but I won't because it's very rude. But it's a range. There's a wide range of things that come out in our WhatsApp group. But
there's a wide range of things that happen in HR, and some of them are rude.
Exactly that. Exactly that.
I think, you know, the learning is one thing, but creating that space where people can be themselves and they know that everyone in the group gets it. You can't really put a price on that, can you? That's incredible. It's
connection and community, right? And that is the biggest bit for me. I mean, the geeks will know this, but I've kicked out a couple of geeks because it wasn't right. They weren't right. They weren't, you know, aligned to the very few rules that we have and stuff like that. But the act of doing that.
No, but your rules are like, don't be a dick to each other and don't be rude. You know, they're pretty sensible rules, aren't they? Like,
I mean, they're pretty like life essential rules. Yeah.
Bore off, Agnes. Which is what got her kicked out of LinkedIn on Friday, was telling someone to bore off. Might have been an F word beforehand, but that was not directed at the person. So.
No, it was at me. It was F me sideways, which is me, not her. So that's fine.
And I've seen people, there's somebody on LinkedIn who's actually got the F word in their profile. So it's not the swearing.
She's a PR person. She's amazing.
Yeah, it's
brilliant.
Not why did I just say the F word? Like I ever shy away from that anyway.
Because you're being a grown up.
So I don't know why I giggled like a child then. But you know, I've found that recently for myself. Well, I've got a community for HR professionals with ADHD, and it's small, but I created it because I needed it. I didn't realize that's why you'd created the Geeks, but of course it is. Like we do work to stop people from making the mistakes that we made. We create communities that we never had, that sort of thing. But there's there's 50 people, I think, in the Heartbeat community, but there's only about 20 of us in the WhatsApp group. And it's just amazing. Like we've had it's a combination of memes about ADHD, which are quite often hilarious. But sometimes there'll be people, there's been a few recently where people are really, really struggling. And they will leave a note saying, I know that you guys will understand this. You know, and everybody just sort of piles in with support. And that's the most wonderful thing ever. I've got off the topic of learning here again, but that's my ADHD. So let me pull that back again. Want to talk about coaching a little bit. Now, all three of you are coaches, and I'm assuming that all three of you have been coached as well at various points. How can people use being coached or becoming a coach to accelerate their own growth? And I'll ask, who shall I ask that first? Nikki, I'll ask you first. I don't plan this, obviously. Pick a person.
Being coached to accelerate your own growth. Well, that's what coaching is. Growth is about moving forward and how you do that. And firstly, one of the most valuable things in the coaching space is having time to think, time to stop and actually stop all the noise that's going on around you and think about you and what you really want and what's right for you to move forward, and then working with your coach to find the right way forward for you and find the right way to grow. And if you're open to coaching, then you're open to growth and self-awareness, self-reflection, learning about other people's perceptions, learning about assumptions that you make. It's all growth, and it's all self-development, and it just clears the wood from the trees. It gives you that clarity to go, that's where I'm heading, that's what I want to do, and strips out all the noise for you.
It's very true. And what about Carol, I'll ask you next, what about in terms of people becoming a coach as well? Because I know for me, I also coach, and what I learned doing my coaching qualification and what I've learned through coaching my clients has massively helped me develop, because it's a different skill set. I think a lot of people in HR feel like they're coaching people all the time.
Yep.
But actually going and studying it and practicing it and doing all of the stuff that you need to do to get accredited tells you that you sort of were, but you weren't really. And it's, for me, that's been hugely developmental. So just, interested in your thoughts there.
It's the name coach, the naming of the practice that has been overutilized and doesn't necessarily fall in line with what I think when you go through a real coaching experience, or if you go through the coaching certification process, which requires you to go through the experience, you recognize what you've probably thought coaching was is not coaching. It is counseling, it is consulting, it is mentoring. There's a lot of telling that people have said, I'm a coach, but yet they fall in line with the telling component as opposed to the curiosity asking component. And the one part that I think really helped, it's a skill that when I have a program that I'm actually doing for a CIPD group. I have a program called the Change Principle. The Change is the acronym. And what we focus, one area that's part of it is acknowledgement and validation. That component of coaching and why it's so pivotal for HR people to learn this skill and master this skill is what moves you to a trusted advisor. Because it's the active listening, the intuitive listening, and being able to truly acknowledge and validate what's happening in the conversation. And again, that's a skill you learn when you go through your coaching certifications, at least through anything that's ICF related. But it's interesting how coaching is an element that we don't see as part of certification with SHRM or CIPD. And it is a missed opportunity for us as a practice. And that's really where I've been leaning into the last 8 months of, let me tell you how to incorporate the mindset, the skills, the practicability of coaching principles into what it means to be an HR person. And I do tell people, look, you can go ahead and learn it through my talks and through my workshops, but you really feel it and learn it when you actually go and become somebody who's coached. And I think that when you take the time to go through something like that, you're going to accelerate your career. And it's happened with all of my clients, whether it's getting your first top rated performance review because you've embraced the principles as a vice president. And now your CEO or your SVP or whoever it is you report to recognize that the way you've approached everything, the lens in which you've approached everything has completely changed. Mm-hmm. It is a skill, and it's a skill you can learn. So I would say that when I think about going through coaching or advising people or mentoring people to go through coaching themselves to get certified, for me, it's been an amazing skill. It's really helped me see myself better. I don't get nearly as confrontational as I used to.
I found that after I did my coaching qualification, I still continued to work in HR for a good 2-3 years before I went fully self-employed. It completely changed my interactions with senior leaders.
Yep.
Completely changed it. Way more asking questions, way less telling. Yep. And that's just the surface. That's just the very surface of it. But it stands me in such good stead for the work that I do now. So I do due diligence, management due diligence for private equity companies. So I go into the organizations that they're looking to invest in. I interview the management team, and then I write a report. For those interviews that I do with leadership teams, I would not get anything like the information and the data that I get if I didn't have my coaching qualification and those skills, but it's completely flipped it on its head. So Michelle, how about you?
I feel like I'm going to have to do what she said here, because they are all brilliant answers. I think when I was in-house, I did have an exec coach, and interestingly, all of the leadership team had the same exec coach. So for me, that was both great and horrific. So it was great in the sense that this coach knew all of the players that were in my sphere, so that was really helpful. When I spoke about Jim that did this or Bob that did that, he would know who that person was. But it was less good because I don't think he was a fit for me, and I didn't realize that until I started being a coach myself, when I realized actually not everybody fits everybody in, and a lot of the time getting best fit is often the hardest thing to do. So yeah, I think there's something interesting about being coached and having it as like time for you. And I love that you mentioned being validated, Carol, because that's a huge thing in the HR people that I coach, is they just suddenly realize that they're not aliens. The way they've been thinking is normal, and this happens to a lot of people. And I think that can be really powerful sometimes. So yeah, what she said and all of that.
One of my coaching clients said to me last week, just having the opportunity to say all of this out loud has been huge for me, because it's all been flying around in my head, but I don't want to bother my spouse with it. And you've just let me just go blah, because I said it was an intro kickoff call, and I was like, it doesn't matter if there's any structure to it, just tell me whatever you think I need to know, what is going on for you, you know, all of that. And we did 90 minutes, and at the end of it, he was just like, and so it's just little things like that, just being able to get that out there, because then once it's out there, then you can start to kind of, okay, what are we going to tackle first, kind of thing. So that was really cool.
Yeah. And what you said about learning, it's what it gave me going through the coach training is self-confidence in, especially in relationships, in working with people, and like you said, that impact at sort of interviewing at board level and things like that, or just being able to hold a room in a team meeting, or like run a training session. It just fits into so many different parts of what we do in the HR world.
It takes away that fear of always having to have an answer, because actually all you need is a question.
Totally that.
And so the pressure's off. It's like, you know, I just need to ask a question. Let everybody else do all the work,
all the thinking.
all the thinking. So, Michelle, I'll come to you, because I that's not fair to give you another what she said. And also, you probably do more of this than the others on the panel in terms of content creation, or dicking around on LinkedIn, as you call it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you see that creating things like articles and doing speaking gigs and podcasts and things like that can become a development tool?
Yeah, for sure. And interestingly, it's one of the things that I suggest on my program when we talk about using LinkedIn as an HR pro, is how you can do that. So often, you know, just that act of, you know, reading an interesting article and then summarizing it back in a way that's meaningful and engaging is thought leadership, right? It might not be your research or your particular piece of content, as long as you're referring back to that as your source, that can make it interesting, fascinating, that kind of stuff. And I think I always talk to people about, you know, thought leadership doesn't necessarily mean you have to, you know, be doing research and creating something as like a dissertation level kind of quality stuff. You can dick about on LinkedIn and still be a thought leader. But there are bits where, you know, lots of people come to me and say, oh my God, that piece of content was amazing. And it's an image that I've cribbed from Instagram because I love it, but I've given my spin on it that's couched in, you know, my learning, things I've read, things that I love, that kind of stuff, that can be just as powerful. So yeah, I think it is a great skill and can be a great development tool, because you're learning to, you know, like summarize, be succinct, find interesting, engaging ways to hook people in, trying to create people that want to follow you and see more of your content, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it's really powerful, actually, more powerful than I thought it was when I started. Yeah.
And how about podcasts? Somebody's just asked for recommendations for podcasts. I don't have the attention span for podcasts, even though we have an Evolving HR podcast. I do listen to those on my walks, but I'm terrible. Anything with a video, the first thing I look at is how long is it? And if it's more than 20 minutes, I'm like, yeah, that's not happening. So, my best friend is a YouTube influencer, and I've never watched anything she does on YouTube because I'm like, we're waffling on for an hour about makeup. Like, I'm not going to spend an hour listening to you talking about makeup, although I do love you. But I'm not the person to ask. Do any of you guys have any podcast recommendations? And then I'll ask Carol and Nikki about the content piece as well.
I personally am probably not the best person to ask because the kind of pods that I listen to are about serial killers.
Yeah,
so I probably don't think they're the ones to share in this scenario.
There are lots of podcasts out there, and I think I probably have a easier time listening to segments of podcasts. 3 to 5 minute segments of podcasts. I have my own podcast, which I have 2 seasons, and my 3rd season is still waiting to be edited. So it's helpful because you're listening, like we're listening here in these webinars, we're listening to real life experiences. And as we had mentioned, it validates our thoughts and it validates our feelings. I think one that I've recently said was, and not everybody, not everybody likes the sound of certain people's voices, but I like listening to certain people only because they're very vulnerable. And I do need to understand if I'm feeling vulnerable in that moment or in that day, I want to listen to a podcast that's going to help validate, okay, I'm not crazy. But I don't know that I have any ongoing, there's things that I listen to like you, Michelle, right now, because I live in the United States, that I'm staying abreast of things. But nothing on a learning on HR basis. I've been on I don't even know how many podcasts at this point.
I tend to listen to ones about the Tudors.
Oh, yeah.
If I do. And my best friend, who's the YouTube influencer, she also has a podcast called The Imperfectionist. And it's rather lovely, actually, because it's all about, imposter syndrome, and it's about showing up for ourselves. And she asks all of her guests, she starts every single one with, what is something that you always told yourself that you now know is a lie? And so she's had some, she's in Ireland, and the podcast is mostly Irish guests and me. But I did do an episode of it when I was over in Dublin a few months back. And that one, I have listened to her podcast, I have to say, when she has cool people on. And I've listened to my episode 3 times because I'm a narcissist. We'll have to go and look at that, Polly, actually. We'll have to see if we can come up with some, because I know there's a bunch of evolving HR providers that have podcasts. Faye Wallace has one. Is it HR Coffee Time?
Yes, HR Coffee Time. To be fair, I do really love Faye. She is the nicest person I think I've ever met. Like, she is so lovely, sweet. And hers is good.
Lovely. Kelly has a podcast, Frazzled.
Yes, Frazzled. Yeah.
I was on HR Sucks, which I thought was...
Oh, that's a great name.
Yeah. Brilliant. And I was like, originally the name turned me off. But then when I met the podcast host, I'm like, oh, the whole reason we are doing this is to elevate the practice and the people of HR. Got it. Yes, I want to be on the show.
Oh, you need to connect me with who it is that runs that, because they sound like my people.
They sound awesome. Yeah.
Actually, I'm on a mission to be a guest on some podcasts, and I'm doing one in a couple of weeks' time with the Wanna Pod. But to stretch me to learn, to grow, and find out and get curious about podcasts and put myself in that uncomfortable zone, really. So yeah, I dip in and out. I use podcasts like I do networking and groups and communities when I need it for what I dip in and out of Diary of a CEO. But like you said, they're way too long. I have to that's an aeroplane watch. Yeah. Listen, that is, and then at the minute, coaching business ones really. Someone, Elisa, you asked me about the OD stuff earlier. The CIPD do have an OD podcasts as well, so there's quite a few CIPD podcasts because I teach CIPD, and there's quite a few that they do.
One of the geeks has one called More Than a Lumpy Jumper, which is what used to be called, if you were a woman in the military, a lumpy jumper. But her podcast is brilliant. It's her and her friend Bridget, and they talk about like love, life and leadership kind of stuff, but everything always comes back to a core leadership message, and theirs are actually really good, really interesting. They've had some really fascinating guests on, and they're just some really good ones. Like they had a reverend on and they were talking about the power of community and stuff like that. It was just really, really fascinating. So that's a good one to go on.
Oh, I'll look that one up.
Yeah, it's good.
That one up. That sounds fun. I also really liked, again, nothing to do with work, Kathy Burke's one about death. It's Kathy Burke, and she asked all her guests, like, how would they like to die? What would their funeral be like? What music would they have playing? And that was the format with everybody. And so I've listened to those on planes, because she had Dawn French, Jennifer Saunders. She's had so many amazing guests on there, and it's hilarious. It's very dark, but it's hilarious, and like Kathy Burke is just very funny. Anyway,
that is cool. I like
serial killers, death, funerals.
Yeah,
there's a theme going on here.
I can bring everything back to the macabre. It's like that's what I do. But I hope we're out of time. I hope that this has been useful for those of you listening. I hope that what we've tried to get across is that there are multiple different ways that you can continue to grow, learn, and develop. It doesn't have to end with your qualification. And I think it's also apparent from the panel that there's a lifelong learning attitude in all of us here. And if what's that expression they always use? If it's important to you, you'll find the time. Otherwise, you'll find an excuse. So you can go find the resources if it's something that you want to do. I think the biggest mistake that we can make is waiting to see if it will happen to us, because it doesn't. You have to go take control of your own learning. So thank you very much to my panel.
It's been brilliant. Thank you.
To see you all. And I will be back I can't remember when the next one is. I have to have a look. I just loaded up all the June ones. I think the next one is 4th of June.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to remember what it's about. And I literally just posted them all at the weekend, but my brain's gone blank. Oh yeah, it's about men's health. It's called Let's Talk About Men's Health, because somebody has to.
Yes.
And I have a panel of men who are actually going to talk about their health. So I've got Jay Unwin as a guest on that. John Palmstrom and Gary Johannes, who is Jay and Gary are both mental health in business, mental health at work experts. So that will be quite interesting. We're going to look into why men don't take action about their own health and that sort of thing. So thank you very much. I shall get the recording up on the app tomorrow, and hope to speak to all of you ladies soon.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.